Hello, and welcome to Keeping It Real with Shannon Live. Because you don't know how it's going to turn out.
My kids empowered me to get out.
What's going on with this remote learning in the midst of COVID?
Working for different elected officials, learning and understanding how to put your community first.
Hi, and welcome to Keeping It Real with Shannon. How's everybody doing?
Hi, how are you?
I'm just fine. How you doing?
Hanging in there.
You all know that this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we all know how serious domestic violence is, and it's been going on for ages and still going on. But we are just so happy and excited to have our guest that's joining us tonight. She has been a domestic violence victim, and our topic is domestic violence, what it taught her and how she is still living her life. Doreen Lesane. She is a New York City domestic violence advocate. She's the leading voice for victims and survivors of abuse. She is New York-born educator who combines her personal experience with domestic violence with her professional experience to bring awareness to this crime. She also wrote a book called Thrive, My Story to Tell, which tells her journey through the dark and dangerous world of domestic violence and abuse into the light of life as she can tell it today. So we want to give her a warm welcome to the show tonight. Miss Doreen Lesane, how are you?
Hello, everyone. I'm doing well. How are you?
We are so happy and so glad that you took the time to join us for this important topic that we know is crucial, and it seems like it's not getting better and it's not talked about enough, the awareness. So women and men is a big as well can know that there's a way out. So we just, because you was a victim and a survivor, could you just tell us a little bit about your story?
So the short version of my story is that I was married to somebody whose father was in law enforcement. So back then, resources and like really the knowledge and awareness that we have now was not nowhere where it is now. It was a 10-year journey of getting out of it. I suffered through all the different types of abuses that domestic violence is, including the family violence aspect of it. It was a really difficult time. It was a scary time. It was a time of, like I said, living in a dark space, and I just was a different person, right? And so when you look at how I learned to live, people who are experiencing domestic violence as well as myself back then, it's not living, it's not life. It's more like really surviving, not even day to day, but more like moment to moment, depending on, who that abuser is, right? And for me, it was moment to moment to moment, because you just really never knew that moment of how things could escalate and get really crazy. And actually, he almost murdered me 3 times. So, by the grace of God, I'm still here. I'm still alive, and I've learned to live again.
So when you got out, Doreen, what made you decide now I'm going to speak for other women? Because you really have become a true advocate for women, and I'll say men too, because like I say, they are victims as well. What gave you that strength and the energy to say, look, I'm going to do something about this?
So
I'm going to try to do something about this.
So actually, I wasn't planning on doing this at all, but I was working at this particular job, and somebody there, we had kind of got to know each other, and they was telling me that I should do it, and I was like, nah, I'm not going to do that. But eventually, I decided that, you know what, why not? Let me see what happens. Let me see what can happen. I never anticipated becoming who I did, or looking for any fame or fortune or anything like that. I just got to a place where I wanted to share this information so people would understand what it's like for the person that's enduring the abuse, right? Because everyone outside of the abuse is really standing outside, looking inside. And when you're inside that circle, you see your situation totally different. And it's really hard to explain to people what you are going through or why you haven't left or why you're behaving the way you're behaving, why you're, quick temper, why you don't trust anyone. It's really hard to describe that because in people mind, the people who are standing outside of your circle, even society as whole, your neighbors, whoever, the first thing they say is like, why don't you just leave? Thinking that it's like, okay, he don't punch me in my eye. Let me just pack up my 4 kids and our little cat and let's just walk on out this door. But where was I going with 4 kids and my cat? Like that is so unrealistic, right? And so it just brought me to a place like I had to start looking back and saying, something is not right. Especially when I was sitting there having conversations with my clients that we was to be talking about education, and they
And
kept telling me that I can't go home tonight, or I'm afraid to go home, or I might not be in class tomorrow. And I was like, well, you have to come to class, right? And they're like, but this is my situation. And even though I was removed from it physically at that point for like maybe 10 years, it just started to resonate in me that I was that person sitting there,
exactly.
right? And somebody helped me in my process,
Doreen,
right? And then it just kind of snowballed. Yes.
I'm sorry, Doreen.
I'm sorry. Yes.
I just had a question to ask. During your years of abuse, were you removed from your family and friends? Was your abuser like separating you from your family and friends?
So the isolation was just like so quick
Mm-hmm.
that you really don't even see it happening. Right. And then I lived on one side of town and my siblings were all grown living on a whole nother side of town. And one of them had already moved out of state and everything. And then, you have siblings, y'all grow up, y'all have families, y'all have kids. And sometimes your life kind of gets separated. Right. So it was kind of easy to now do the isolation. It was just like really quick. And I really can't say he separated me from my friends because quite honestly, I was focused more on raising my kids, and trying to be in a marriage, right? As opposed to hanging out and with the girlfriends and all of that. I was really family focused. So it was really that isolation just came like boom out of nowhere. But then the isolation was also part of the tactic with respect to the more a person is abused, they start to self-isolate themselves because people are judging them.
Yeah.
Right. You know
Right?
what?
People are blaming them. So after a while, what you do, you don't realize that you're falling into step with what he's doing because now you're isolating yourself, which cuts off all of your help.
Right. You know, Doreen, as an educator, you had mentioned something that kind of resonated with me a minute ago. You mentioned that when your students said to you that they can't come back tomorrow, the situation you're in, and sometimes these are red flags, and they're reaching out and calling out for help.
Yes.
And people really don't understand that. Like I always tell people in certain situations, and I always use suicide as an example because we got 95% people who contemplate suicide want to be saved. But it's just the people
Yes.
around them don't recognize the signs and symptoms, and that people are actually reaching out for help.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
But the thing about it is when they're reaching out for help, right? Now, like you said before, Doreen, there's certain things you can't say to them, about, like you may say to them, well, you can do this and why don't you do that or whatever like that. So you really can't say that to them. So it's like hard to know, okay, so what should I say to them that would convince them that it's time for you to go, that, you have to get out.
Number one, you cannot convince anyone to leave, right?
Right.
Because the statistics, there are a lot of statistics surrounding domestic violence. I like to keep it real. The average statistic actually is wrong because they're based on numbers that are reported. And the numbers of reported numbers are actually lower than the numbers that are not reported, right? And the number one statistic that shows to be accurate is that a woman is more likely to be murdered at 3 points: when she tried to leave, within the first year of leaving, and if she's pregnant dealing with domestic violence, right? So it's not about us convincing it. It's like when a person discloses to you that they're being abused, your first response is like, should not be, you should leave, right? It should be, is there anything you is there anything that you think that I can do? Because by saying that, you're empowering them to make a decision. Because remember, the average person who's being abused, all of their decision making ability have been stripped away from them. Because domestic violence is not about love and it's not about anger. It's about power and it's about control. And how do you control a person? You remove their ability to make decisions. So if you're speaking with somebody and they disclose to you and they tell and you say, well, how can I help you? And they go, well, I really don't know, but maybe you can, but never mind, I don't know. They are doing that because they are so accustomed to not, number one, making their own decisions, and number two, every decision they make, there's going to be a consequence behind it from their abuser.
Okay, so like Vanessa said about when they told you about they couldn't come back to class, and she said, "Oh, well, that's a sign of a red flag." Okay, so if you see that as a red flag, so do you approach the person by asking them, "Are you in that situation?" or should you just not say anything and just keep an eye on what the person is doing?
I would say operate within your lane of expertise. If you don't feel comfortable talking about it, and if there are any other providers in that environment, counselors, therapy, social workers, refer that person to them or ask that person, I have somebody that you can speak to. Is it okay if I give them your name? Is it okay? Would you like to speak to them? Everything is really about giving them the option and empowering them to make those decisions instead of forcing those decisions on them. And if you don't feel comfortable doing it, then say, can you please give me a minute? And you go back to that counselor, to that therapist, to that social worker and say, listen, Ms. Doe, I was doing a screening for her, whatever, and she expressed to me that she cannot go back home. I think that might be a red flag. I think there might be something going on. Social workers are trained to now handle those situations.
That's why there are mandated reporters.
Yes.
A lot of individuals are placing, and the added resources out there is really giving women more a better opportunity to at least reach out to others and have others have that voice for them, at least start that initial process of getting up to the situation that they're in.
So then why do you feel that they're not using those resources then?
Several reasons, right? And one of the main reasons is that they may not know the resources available, right? Remember, they've been isolated. Their phones are screened, their laptops, all of their electronics are screened, their phone calls are screened, right? So one, many don't know the resources are out there. Another huge factor is that those that know the resources are out there may have attempted to get the resources and things didn't work out for them, and so they just left it alone, or they may have been re-victimized by the system.
So we're gonna take a quick break, and we're gonna come right back to continue our conversation with our special guest, Miss Lesane. We'll be right back.
It's Shannon. It's Shannon.
This year, celebrate Vote Early Day
and make your voice heard.
Each year, the amount of people voting early grows.
And this fall, over 220 million Americans can vote early.
In person.
By dropping off their ballot.
Or mailing it in. With so many options, you can vote when it's convenient for you.
Election Day is the last day to cast your ballot.
So the question isn't why vote early.
It's why wait. Join the celebration and find out how you can vote early at voteearlyday.org.
Hi, welcome back. If you're just joining us, our topic is domestic violence, and we know that's on the rise and still is not getting any better. But our special guest tonight is giving us a lot of information. And before, Doreen, you were saying about the 3 things that you would like for the victims to know.
Also, the first thing is that there's help available. Right, there is help available. Like we was discussing before we went to the commercial break. Many people don't know that there is help available. The second thing I would like for anybody who's dealing with domestic violence to know is that they're not alone. Right. And what I mean by that is that physically you may be alone, but the truth of the matter is that there are many people out here who are doing all types of fabulous work behind the scenes, right? Not everybody is going out to domestic violence rallies and parades and walk. There are people that are working behind the scenes to make sure that the services are there. There are people that, are taking calls 2, 3 o'clock in the morning to make sure people are moved from one place to the next place. And the third thing is that we're here tonight to let you know that we hear you and that we see you, right? And that we're bringing you this information to let you know that you are not alone.
So,
And so
Doreen,
thank you, Miss Lottie, for the show.
the question is that we have you said we have the resources out there, and that you feel like a lot of the people don't know that the resources are there. And I mean, what else do we need to do to get it more out there? Because this has been going on for years and years and years, and it's continuing to go on. So how do we get the word more out there that there is resources if someone is in this predicament? Do we need to do more stuff in the media, or do we need to do more conferences to spread? I mean, what do we need to do? Because if resources are out there, why is it so hard for people to know that the resources are there?
It's hard for people to understand the resources because when you see the DV stories, number one, when you see DV stories on the news, right? So and so was a victim and she ended up dying and they did an investigation, it's the way it's portrayed in the media. Number one, right? Number two is that we have to hold our elected officials accountable, right? Again, we keep writing, there are all these laws and people keep writing laws, but writing laws are good. Let's enforce these laws, right? And number three is that we can't just have Domestic Violence Awareness Month in October because it happens all years round, right? So people are going all out in October. So if I'm a victim of domestic violence, right, and I've been in my situation 2, 3 years, and I only see all of this publicized, we're here for you, and all of this other stuff in October, what happens to who I am? The rest of the year to let me know that I'm just not an afterthought in October. And I don't just say that from me. I say this from the hundreds of clients I've worked with, the hundreds, right, who feel as though they're lost, they're abused at home, right? But then society views them as invisible, right? So it has to be more awareness.
Okay, what do you mean that way, invisible? What do you mean? Like if they complain about something, or I don't understand. What do you mean in that sense?
In the sense, I'll give you an example. You just made the statement that domestic violence is not going anywhere and it's on the rise. It is on the rise. And here in the Bronx, it is off the chart. It's the highest in any other borough in the Bronx, right? So those are facts that we know. So we know that domestic violence is high in the Bronx, but we promote all of these other crimes that are happening in the Bronx, but nobody is really speaking about, let's pour more funding into DV. Let's get out there and really do a campaign, not just to make the people who are being abused know what domestic violence look like. They know what it smell like. They know what it sound like. They know what it feel like, right? What about the people who don't know? That really should be the target market. The people who don't know what it is, the people who don't understand what it is, so that they will know. So that when somebody comes to them with the red flag or somebody disclose to them, if they don't want to get involved, at least they can resource them out, right? Because they'll be able to recognize what they're dealing with, right? But feeling invisible means that when I look at the news, I know there's domestic violence going on. Everybody knows that person in that particular building or that particular block, but nobody's talking about it. So if you're not talking about what's happening to me, I feel invisible.
You mean individuals like us need to learn more about it. So this way, if we see something going on, we'll better understand how to assist that person.
Yes.
But you know what, Lottie, I don't want to be a misconception that people just think domestic violence is something physical. You have emotional, you have
verbal is just as bad as physical.
These are all
absolutely
violence. Looking at the climate of what we have today with our young youth. A lot of these young girls are in spaces with much older men, and they don't know that they're could be potentially in domestic violence situations. So how do we really reach out to those young individuals that are in these type of situations?
Yeah.
So, I'm kind of old school, right? And I think that's a conversation the parents really need to be having with their young girls.
Yeah.
We can't leave everything for the school system and the service providers and the after school program and the community organizations to do. We have to be accountable as parents to have these conversations. And I get teenagers are hard to raise, right? I had four of them in my house at one time. Right. So now they're 30 through 39. They're grown up. So I get how difficult it is. But sometimes what happened when our children is dating, right?
Mhm.
We're too quick to be mom when something go wrong, as opposed to, and I'm not saying take your mother hat off, right? Because I never did. Like I was cool with my kids, but I ain't your friend, right? But
Exactly.
being
Right.
cool with
Exactly.
them, but being
Exactly.
cool with them means that you can have a conversation with them, and sometimes what they say to you, you don't want to hear it, but in order to help them, you have to be able to receive it. Right. And
Right.
so if
Right.
somebody's daughter is coming home and she kind of bruised up, or her attitude changed from being just nice, sweet and always compliant, and now she has this attitude, and she
Right.
done changed her hair and she don't want to socialize with nobody in the family, those sometimes are red flags of domestic violence, that she's being abused. And I'm gonna
That
give you
would
a
be
statistic that Dr. Vanessa, that a lot of abuse that is happening to our young people are happening in school.
Right.
Yes.
yeah.
Right.
It's
Yes.
happening in
Right.
school. So when we're talking about our young girls dropping out of school, their grades are falling and everything, that's because the person that's abusing them, whether it's physically, mentally, sexually, as well, it's happening in school.
Mhm.
Right.
That's
So
a
we
Well,
have to
that's
have those tough conversations with them. We can't
So
always outsource it to someone else,
right.
because at the end of the day, those are our children. And how do they trust us, and how do they keep that esteem, that self-esteem that we talked about
Right.
earlier, if we don't put it in them?
Well,
Doreen,
see,
that
that's the
question.
other thing I was going to say too is that when your kids are dating, you need to know who they're dating. If you got a guy you dating, he needs to come home so I can see who that guy is. Now, if you don't want to bring him home, then we got a problem
Doreen,
Absolutely.
how do
because
you
you should know
identify?
who your children are dating.
And that's male or female. Because I ride the train a lot, and I've seen some young girls with their fresh nails up in the boy's throat. Him lean back on the train, telling him to shut up, and she will.
Mhm,
I've seen it, so it's
mhm,
across the
mhm.
board. We know domestic violence doesn't discriminate, and while we're protecting our daughters, we have to protect our sons as well.
Hmm.
We have to
Exactly.
protect our nephews and our grandsons as well. We really do.
Mhm.
That's another way of looking at really breaking the cycle. Because if we just look at the young girls and the ladies, and we're not looking at the men and the young boys that are being abused, what are we really doing? How are we
Mhm.
really dealing with domestic violence? We have to look
Mhm.
at it from all aspects.
Well,
Doreen, you said
it's
something
funny
that was.
because the thing about it is, I guess we don't look at the
I
males and
can't
the
hear
young
it.
boys as much because you you wouldn't even think they would let the women abuse them like that.
No, but just like it's sexual abuse and rape, men get raped
No,
as
I
well.
know, but I'm saying I think because we don't look at, well, I'm not saying for other people. I'm saying for me, I wouldn't look at it that this man, when I have seen women do it, this man would stand there and let this woman beat on him
Because
or
you're looking at the
sexually
norm.
assault. You know what I'm
You're
saying?
looking,
You just wouldn't think that's coming from a man,
Lottie,
but
you're
you
looking
know
at the
that.
societal norms that's out there. What you have to share, Jackie?
So I was thank you. I was curious to know. You had said like as a like you could witness certain things and behaviors how they change, and you was like the changing of the hair and they may be aggressive. How do you check? How do you watch signs of like I would think like a man that is a or a person that's abusing someone else, they would want them to look meek and not be shown. How can you see and how can you witness someone being without them telling you being abused? And I'm just curious to like how what are the signs, if there are any signs, to see
There are
if your
signs.
best friend is getting abused.
Number one, inappropriate clothing. So it's summertime. She have a turtleneck on. It's raining. She have eyeglasses on. Right? Again, she was outgoing, social butterfly, all kinds of friends. She started dating. All of a sudden, she's not dating with anybody. So when you hear people say, "Oh, she thinks she all that because she got a new boyfriend," no, homeboy might be isolating her and abusing her and don't want her to have any friends.
Oh, okay.
Failing grades, right? we don't have enough time. So what I would say, everybody has a phone in their pocket. Go to Google. Google is a really good friend. Google what are the signs of somebody being abused, young or old, right? It will pop up with a list. You can find about 20, 30 different things, right? And then sometimes you will see somebody, or somebody will pop in your mind like, oh my God, this fits her. So if you want to step to her gently, step to him gently, like, okay, I know this, you're not hanging out with your friends anymore. Is everything okay? Like really gentle questions, like, no, is he beating you? Don't accuse them of anything, because right now they are scared.
Yeah.
They are confused. They are ashamed. They are
Yeah.
humiliated. Right. And so what they need in that moment, they need empathy, they need kindness, and they need compassion. And if they
Yeah.
tell you they don't want to talk, don't force them. Just say, I'm here for you when you're ready to talk.
Yeah.
Because they don't trust anybody.
So basically, like badgering a person to confide in you and confide in what happened is not the answer, but
No.
gradually let them come into to be confident by you talking
Yes.
to them, to tell them what's going on.
Yes. And maintain their confidentiality once they do. Because you might be the only safe person that they have that they can come to and have that conversation with. Everybody else may be connected to the abuser. So please maintain a confidentiality. It's really crucial, because once you defile their trust, what's going to be happening is that they're not going to trust anybody. So even if they want to leave, they're not going to have anybody to go to, because now they have nobody to trust.
Okay. All right, we have to wrap up this portion of the show. We're gonna come back with a few minutes out of after show, and if you want to join us for the after show, you can go to the Facebook page or YouTube and watch us. And I want to thank Doreen for you joining us for the first half of the show. And
Thank you.
we just hope that if you are listening tonight and you're in this situation, that you do something about it, because you don't have to stay there. I can't tell you what to do because I'm not supposed to be judgmental, because I would tell you what to do, but I can't, but we have to be sensitive to the situation. As you said, we can't judge the people or whatever, but if you
Find a
see the
trusted
red
person
flag,
to talk to.
Yeah.
right, if you see the red flag, then get some help. Don't stay there, because you don't have to stay there. So we want to thank you again for joining us
Thank
tonight.
you.
And as always, we'll see you next time.
Today's show is sponsored by Abu's Bakery. If you have a sweet tooth, stop by Abu's Bakery for some delicious cakes and pies.
Do you like beautiful pictures for your home or your office? Then stop by Stage Rock Gallery. They have a large selection of pictures from around the world.
It's Shannon. It's Shannon. It's Shannon. It's Shannon. It's Shannon. Keeping it real. It's Shannon. It's Shannon. It's Shannon.
We are back for our after show. Thank you for staying around, Doreen. I have a question I do want to ask you. Since you have been a victim and a survivor, do you think that when people get in this situation, before they get in this situation, do you think there's any way of them avoiding themselves getting caught up in this situation and becoming a victim?
Well,
Or
it's
it
really
just comes on
difficult.
and they wouldn't know?
It's really difficult. Typically, I mean, it's like we were saying earlier, that you really can't look at a batterer and tell he's a batterer, right? That's all part of the, if you want to say, game that they're playing. You know what I'm saying? They could be like the sweetest person initially, and then, you kind of wake up and slowly things kind of start manifesting themselves, But I can tell you from experience, personal experience, and professional experience working with men and women and teenagers and doing workshops like all across the city, even in different houses of worship. Everyone I've ever spoken to, no one has ever aspired to be a victim of domestic violence, right? Nobody has ever in their life just like this is the route I want to go,
Yeah.
right? No one looks to find themselves in that situation, and unfortunately, a lot of people find themselves in those situations.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, like you say that you start off things and things are good. You spend so much time, you have time and energy invested, and then you start having kids. The next you know, it's a repeated cycle, and you find
Yeah.
yourself with no way out. And what they do, it's like a process. They start getting you isolated. They start controlling you. You start finding excuses of the behavior. You start finding if they're
Yeah.
if they have alcohol, they're drinking, or they out and here and there. And these are things that unfortunately that people hope that will go away, right? Oh, this is just a temporary situation. But let's definitely, well, 5 years is in, 10 years is in, and now you're at the point of no return, and it can really become detrimental in the long run.
Yeah, and then the times we're living in now, housing is at a premium, right? The rent
Yeah.
is too high, right? And so even those who are in that space where they can walk away, where are they going? Right?
And
Because not everybody wants to live in a shelter. Not everybody wants to take their children out of the school. Not everybody wants to remove themselves from a community that they lived in for 15, 20, 30 years. Not everybody wants to do that, right? And a lot of people can't do that, right? And unfortunately, yeah, they just stay for various reasons, or they are prevented from leaving for a variety of barriers.
Well, Doreen, I know I want to ask you something. I know we talk about domestic violence have been around in different spaces, right? And there's been a fabric of certain parts of our daily life. How as an advocate have you seen the laws change in the judicial system? Are they more now paying? Do you feel that they're paying attention? Do you feel that more laws need to be changed, or in addition to enforcing the ones that's already on the books?
Mm.
I think the laws that are on the book need to, most of them needs to be enforced. Others need to change, like the self-defense law. The greatest change I've seen really happen within the NYPD. They have so many new mechanisms in place that they did not have even 5 years ago. For example, they have where you can text 911. If you're in a domestic violence situation, there was a time where they did not even have domestic violence officers, right? And so they have a whole domestic violence
Yeah. They
unit
do.
inside all 77 of the precincts, right? Their response is now differently because their officers are actually trained to understand the concept of domestic violence. They're trained to understand why people don't leave, right? They're now really trained for this particular space, this particular crime. So I think that's the greatest change I've seen happening. The criminal justice system leaves much to be desired with respect to those that are dealing with domestic violence.
Doreen, can
I'm
I
sure
ask you a
you.
question? When a person puts their trust into the system to say to basically save them and help them to get out of a relationship, do they is that the right route? Like working with the system to help them get out. Do because you hear some cases where women have gone through the system to try to get help, and somehow um, he's still allowed to some come to see the kids, or and then he stalks them and like order for the protections. How can they be a help? How can they feel safe if they decide to go into the criminal justice system to get help?
Listen, you hit it right on the head, right? It's a lot of craziness going on within the criminal justice system where, because again, the way they're written, and they allow these abusive fathers to continue to have visitation and custody and overnights and all of that other stuff. And you're right, it leaves a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. And again, each person's situation is different. Each um, survivor or victim, however they describe themselves, their situation is different. Some people go through the system and it work out for them. Unfortunately, there are more than a handful that go through the system and it doesn't work out for them. And so I always tell people, you have to do what's best for you. You can't do what other people is telling you to do because you know your situation and you know that person better than anybody else, even their siblings, even their mothers, because behind closed doors, people are much different than who they present themselves to be.
Absolutely.
Right. And so you have to do what you feel is best, even if it goes against what other people tell you to do, because it's really about staying safe until you
Right.
can get into a safe space.
I just want to add something about to the audience regarding order protection. I
Yeah.
know sometimes people may say that it's just a piece of paper, but it still comes with legal benefits with people in both parties need to abide by. I have seen, I'm not limiting this to women, but I've seen women who have order protections and they use it for the convenience when it's convenient. And what I mean by that, they may allow the perpetrator or the person in question, the subject in question, not to come, not to be over. But when it's payday or when it's for the convenience or some other benefit, they may allow them to come over and they break their order protection. But then when things get out of control and get out of hand, they feel to realize that they're in breach of that order protection once things out of control, and they call law enforcement to come now. And the first thing they say is that, oh, I have order protection. Yeah, but how did he get in the resident? Did you open the door for him in the resident? You're just in violation, and that helps women lose that order protection. That can revoke that order protection for them as well. So I would say to women and individuals out there who have order protection, if you need the court system and you need a paper trail, and you have a paper trail, and you're trying to get out of a current situation, when abide by those rules, because they will come back and be against you, and they won't. And the court system will not take you serious that you really need help.
Yeah.
That is
Because
100% the truth.
right. But I mean, we just had, I'm sure you heard the case that's on now with the lady Tracy McCarter, the one who stabbed her husband 2 years ago, who's in jail
The
now, and they're
nurse.
trying to get her
Yes.
out because she was defending herself. But they are looking at it that even though she might have been defending herself, that she still killed, the husband, because she was being constantly abused by him. So I guess this one point they were fighting or whatever, and she stabbed him. But that's the way they are looking at it, is that just because she was defending herself, it doesn't mean anything. So, I mean, the law seems like it's just all screwed up.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
something would be an issue. To know that I'm getting my abuser, I'm doing what I need to do to stay alive to keep my abuser off of me. And if he subsequently gets killed, I go to jail. So a lot of women would like, probably I don't want to do anything because I might go to jail. So I just don't understand how they can a person that's being abused would want to believe that they're safe with all the laws.
And that's
Very
something I was
frightening.
speaking to a little bit earlier, when I said that, for a lot of people, they feel trapped because of how they view everything that's going on with this particular case, with other cases that were similar to it, with all of this other stuff that's playing out in the media. But domestic violence awareness is only about October. So it's kind of like they're being trapped almost by society, right? Because of how society views victims, right? And then when they see another case playing out in the media, how that person is treated will absolutely, Jacqueline, deter another victim from coming forward
Right.
and getting help, or
Yeah.
even trying to protect themselves in that moment.
But
Well, I
Doreen,
mean, it's just like,
I'm sorry, you mentioned something earlier. I just want you to elaborate for the audience of how that self-defense works and how it does not work in here in New York City, since you're advocating out there and letting people know what is the difference.
So I think it's under New York State, if I'm not mistaken, the self-defense law is that you can only use enough force to get a person off of you and to get away. So anything more than that is considered excessive force. So, for example, if I'm being strangled and I take something and I bust the person in the head and they pass out or they die, they don't consider that self-defense. They consider that excessive force, right? So even if I'm 5'5", so if he's 6'5" and I hurt him more than he hurt me, I will actually go to jail because I use excessive force
That's
under the
just
law.
absurd.
I don't make the rules. I don't make the laws.
But
I
just
keep saying they need to be changed. They
that's
need to be
exactly.
enforced.
See,
They
this
need to be changed in a manner
review.
that they are victim friendly.
Yeah.
They're not
People think
victim friendly. They're not
I'm
victim friendly.
I'm in a situation where he is killing me. He is choking me, and I reach and grab something, and I do it to get him off of me, and he subsequently dies. That that would make someone say, "I can't. I'm scared because
I have a
I
fr-
don't know
I
who it
have
is.
a
Yeah,
friend.
I can't leave my kids."
Yeah, I have a friend that kind of happened to her. Her husband was tussling and everything. He accosted her. It was been going on for a while. And when she slapped him, she ended up scratching him. He called the cops. When the cops came, she wanted him arrested. He wanted her arrested, but she said, well, he was strangling me because they didn't see any marks on her neck. They really didn't want to arrest him. So he was like, okay, so cross complaint. So they both end up going down to central bookings. But because he had marks on her, on him, she got charged with a felony.
Well, that's because they couldn't determine who was the primary aggressor on this
Yes,
case.
and that's what I was trying to explain to her. So she's totally distraught because she's like, because there was no marks on my neck,
Mm.
I'm being charged with a felony. He's getting charged with a misdemeanor
Right.
assault.
But
Right.
can you
He is getting charged with a misdemeanor assault, but
Yeah.
she's getting charged with a felony assault, even though the kids are saying no, he attacked mommy. So
And
that's
it's
the
even
screw up.
designed to
That's
help
where
you.
so that's where the laws are not victim friendly because you have a witness in the home, which is the child, saying that the father attacked the mother. But because the father have the bruise, the mother's getting charged with the felony, even though she did not start the
Okay, so can
altercation.
you elaborate how important it is to keep a paper trail?
It is very important to keep a paper trail, picture trail,
Mhm.
go to the doctor, let the doctors make notations of it. Call 911. If you don't want to call 911, call Safe Horizon. Keep a log of everybody you talk to. Everybody you talk to. Keep a paper trail. I don't want anybody to lose their life. I don't want anyone to end up in a hospital. But if you feel that one day you might get to that point where it's time for me to go and you need to prove your position, you have a paper trail. Right. Here's a quick one, right? There was a woman on Oprah many years ago when she was still on TV. The husband was abusing the wife. The wife will go to work bruised up. And one day her supervisor noticed that she had bruises. So she just started marking on her own personal calendar. She came with a black eye, she came with bruise on her neck, and she
Yeah.
kept making these notations, right? And then unfortunately something happened. The wife ended up killing the husband. How did she get off? Because the supervisor had
Let's
kept
keep them.
records of her
Kept
coming
notes.
to work
Right.
bruised. I fell on the stairs. I bumped into the wall. You know, all of the excuses that they make of have they got the bruises and everything. So she was able to not go to jail because somebody else had kept a record of her coming to work in that condition, right? So it's very important to journal what's going on in terms of, documenting it, and pictures are fabulous. Go to the doctor. You know what I'm saying? And if you can't get to the doctor, you do a selfie and you email it or you text it to somebody and then you delete it from your phone so that there's no evidence. And I know that we
Well,
may have some abusers watching as well.
yeah.
And my hope and prayer for them is that they will get help because, in a sense of speaking, many of them come from those households where there was violence. And as Dr. Vanessa said, children learn what they live.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for staying behind and talking to us a little bit
You're
longer.
welcome.
I
Thank
just
you.
say that the laws have to be changed all the way around, not only for domestic violence. I mean, just the regular
Yes.
laws of the criminals now with this new reform bill where you can go home and wait for your trial, and while you're home, you killing somebody else or beating up
Yes.
somebody else. I mean, and they want this. They don't want the bail law changed, like updated or whatever, because I don't understand this. How can someone have a rap sheet as long as I don't know what and can do something and then end up going home to wait to go to trial and then they do something to someone else and someone else is killed or whatever.
But
So it's just
the people who are making the laws with respect to that, these crimes are not being committed in their neighborhood.
Absolutely.
exactly.
Yeah.
They're in our
Exactly.
neighborhood, so it
A
really
whole
did not
other
make us.
show.
So that did not make us safer, right? It's a
No.
whole nother story. But
Yes.
bail reform has also impacted victims of domestic violence as well.
Exactly.
Yes.
Because
Exactly.
they
And
get right out. They're right out.
we
And they mad
too
now.
have to
They're
stop
coming home
killing
mad.
each other. We got to stop this.
Yes,
We
I
got
agree.
to stop killing each other. And this and the one that got shot up there at the supermarket, at the Food Town supermarket on Fulton in Brooklyn Avenue. That's my neighbor. She lives 3 doors down from me that she got shot and stuff. Coming out of the supermarket, waiting for the bus to go home because 2 guys are arguing and with each other. And then one pulls out the gun shooting at her. Like, what is this? I mean, in the day you used to fight with your fists and beat each other up or whatever. Now everybody wants to pull out a gun and a knife to stab somebody. And when you start shooting, you don't know who you're going to hit.
The new evolution, it seems like it's getting worse and it goes up a level each time. Now, before it was fists, then it moved over to razor blades, then knives, then guns, and now it's just right now it's at guns. I have a dispute and I'm going to shoot you.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. But we need to stop this. We don't have to shoot each other. I mean, you can't hit each other or whatever because you're hitting other people. Innocent people are getting killed or shot just standing there talking to someone else or trying to get home. So
yeah, that's where a lot of different programs come in where I work in schools at this time with my peacemaking program, restorative justice practices, to start talking to them while they're young about being a violence interrupter and how to spot it in the schools and giving other students a place to talk, because it's all forms of domestic violence, fighting over we say nonsense, but they believe it's the biggest problem because I don't like the way she's looking at me. So it's just get them while they're talking to them while they're young and letting them know that there's help out there.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Doreen, again, and thank you for the good work. Thank you for the good work that you were doing, and keep the good work up. And anything going on that you need our help with, you can always, call us and let us know.
I appreciate that.
What's happening, everything, with your program and your book and stuff like that. So thanks again, and thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Ladies.
Thank you.
And, thank you all for watching tonight. And remember, if you are in this situation, there's a way to get out. There's a way to get out. You don't have to stay there. So thank you for joining us tonight, ladies. And as always,
thank you.
We'll see you next time.
Alrighty.
Good night, everyone. Stay safe.